Well, am I visible now? Are you able to see me? Am I audible? Okay, I welcome you all in this live stream. Today I wanted to do something different, but it didn't come out the way I wanted it to. So, anyways, I'm back on the mobile phone. So, let more people join in. Wajad Khan, I'm fine. Walaikum Assalam. How are you all? Shahid, Walaikum Assalam. How are you all? Ibran Bhatt, Walaikum Assalam. I'm good. Muhammad Yamin, Walaikum Assalam. Shaista Ali, Walaikum Assalam. Today we are going to start a new topic. In our last lecture, we had finished why we travel by peak wire. Today we are going to discuss Joothan, a Dalit's life. That's the last unit in your chapter. We have skipped unit number 2. We'll discuss that after we finish this. For today, we'll take up Joothan, a Dalit's life. So I request all of you open your textbooks. Mahrish, Walaikum Assalam. Now, before I take up this text, I want to tell you a little background of this Joothan. Well, this is written by Omprakash Valmiki, and he was an acclaimed Dalit writer. He was a poet and he was a social activist also. He was born in Muzaffarnagar in Uttar Pradesh. Now, there is a background to this story, and that is, our society, it's drenched in the caste system. We know everywhere, in India, in our state, okay, everywhere else, we have this, a social evil that is caste system. And what happens with this caste system? That, people who belong to the lowest strata in this hierarchy, they are discriminated. They are not given equal opportunities. Now, government, it has taken several steps in this regard so that it can promote those people who are below the ranks, below the hierarchy of this so-called caste structure. Now, likewise, this story, it talks about this author's own life when he was a school-going boy, what difficulties he faced, what were the problems that he encountered, because the area he lived in, the state he lived in, it was so, drenched with caste system that it was very difficult for this writer of ours to study when he was a school going boy. Now, this is an autobiography. There is a difference between biography and autobiography. Biography is when you write the life story of someone else, and autobiography is when the author himself writes his own story. Now, here in this Joothan, this is an autobiography of Omprakash Valmiki. Actually, it was written in Hindi, then it was translated in English. Uh, then, if we look at the author's life, he was born, as I said, in Muzaffarnagar, Uttar Pradesh, and then he worked in a government ordnance factory. And after his retirement, he shifted to Dehradun. Now, right from his childhood, we see that he was very much sensitive towards his status because he belonged to a very low caste. So he had to face this discrimination within his society, and he lived as an outcast. That's what happens, if a person, he belongs to a working class family, he belongs to a family who is way down the line of this hierarchy line. So he has to face many difficulties. The society doesn't want that person to grow up into, a successful being. The the label of a success. Okay, nobody wants him to be successful. That is what happened with the life of Valmiki, because he belonged to the family of Chudas, the persons, the family who used to, who were indulged in this profession of sweeping. So everybody who surrounded him, they wanted him to be a sweeper. Nobody wanted him to grow as an educated person. So he has lived his life under this label of being a chura. So most people, they would designate him as Oi Chude and something like this. So he was very much sensitive to this thing, but then he did not give up. In this autobiography, we'll try to discuss all those things that happened, that he witnessed when he was a school going boy. Then also, looking at the biography of the author, he was influenced by Dr. Ambedkar. Now, Dr. Ambedkar is a famous personality in India, and he started this movement which is called as the Dalit movement, Dalit activism. And this writer of ours, Omprakash Valmiki, he was also influenced by this Dalit activism. So he took part in this, and he's raised issues related to his community, related to the Dalit community. Because again, Dalits are people who belong to the lowest strata, as far as this social construct of caste is concerned. Then the Valmiki community, as we know, it is ranked lowest in the Hindu caste hierarchy. So within this autobiography, you will witness what happens with those people, whom we designate as belonging to the low caste. What is their lifestyle? What happens to them? How they live their life? Okay, then some important works of Om Prakash Valmiki are: one is Joothan. It was written in 1997. Then he also wrote some poetry collections such as Sadiyon Ka Santap, which he wrote in 1989, Bas Bahut Ho Chuka in 1997, Ab Aur Nahi in 2009, and he received numerous awards like Dr. Ambedkar Rashtriya Samman and 8th Hindi World Convention Award. And then overall, he played a vital role in the propagation of Dalit literature. So he was a voice of the Dalits, because as we see in our society, those people, they are not given the voice, so they usually remain silenced. But this writer of ours, Om Prakash Valmiki, he gave the voice to those silenced people, voice to his community, the people of his community. Now, in this autobiography, you will see the school life of Om Prakash Valmiki. He will himself narrate what he underwent when he was a school going boy, how he lived in a society which was full of people belonging to the lowest strata of the society. uh, आप रोल नंबर मत लिखिए, प्लीज थोड़ा सा क्लास पे आप फोकस अगर करें तो दैट वुड बी बेटर. I hope all of you have opened your textbooks. So I think we'll straight away jump into the text. This is not a difficult one, and I hope you'll enjoy this. Now, I wanted to tell you one more thing. There is one aspect of literature is that you read literature for enjoyment. You read literature for pleasure, what is called as art for art's sake. But this Valmiki's the autobiography of this writer, it is categorized as art for life's sake. Okay, in this he will highlight the social issues that we are faced with, that we see in our day-to-day routine, that we see in our life, these social evils that will be highlighted within this autobiography. So you will enjoy this, and our ignorances, they'll be vanished. You'll see the world with open eyes, and you'll see how discriminated our society is, how they discriminate against these people. So let's jump into the text. Now, again, remember that this is an autobiography, so the author, he will discuss about his own life story. Our house was adjacent to Chandrabhan Taga's gher or cowshed. Next to it lived the families of Muslim weavers. Now he is giving the description of the locality that he lived in. So his house, it was adjacent to Chandrabhan Taga's gher. Oh, and next to them lived the Muslim weavers. Right in front of Chandrabhan Taga's gher was a little johri, a pond which had created a sort of partition between the Chura's dwellings and the village. So this pond, it had created a distinction between these people who belonged to the lowest castes and the people who belonged to the upper caste. The name of the Johri was Dabowali. So the locality's name was Dabowali. It is hard to say how it got the name of Dabowali, perhaps because its shape was that of a big pit. On one side of the pit were the high walls of the brick homes of the Tagas. Now these Tagas, they belonged to the upper caste. Okay, they were well off financially also, and as far as this caste distinction is concerned, they belonged to the higher castes. At a right angle to these were the day walls of the two or three homes of the Jinwars. After these, there were more homes of the Tagas. On the edge of the pond were the homes of the Churas. All the women of the village, young girls, older women, even the newly married brides, would sit in the open space behind these homes at the edges of the pond to take a shade. No just wonder the cover of darkness, but even in daylight. So this was the condition of their locality. So a pure working class atmosphere. There was no discipline within the community that he lived in. Because they were very poor, they did not have the facilities of hygiene. They did not have the basic facilities that a human being wants. So they would usually, do it in the open air. The Parda observing Tyagi women, their faces covered with their saris, shawls around their shoulders, found relief in this open air latrine. Again, there was no concept of hygiene. They were so poor that they would usually, get the food to eat. So you don't talk about the basic hygienic facilities. So they would not afford that. They sat on Dabowali shores without worrying about decency, exposing their private parts. All the quarrels of the village would be discussed in the shape of a round table conference, and while they would do this thing, they would have a conference and debating different issues related to the locality. There was muck strewn everywhere, so everything was dirty around. The stench was so overpowering that one would choke within a minute, and the locality was not hygienic at all. The pigs wandering in narrow lanes, naked children, dogs, daily fights. This was the environment of my childhood. If the people who call the caste system an ideal social arrangement had to live in this environment for a day or two, they would change their mind. If people who advocate this as an ideal social arrangement, who agree to this notion, who accept this philosophy of caste system, they were given a chance to live in the society for one day, they will change their mind. They will say that this caste system should be abolished altogether. Then he talks about his own family. Our family lived in this Chura Basti. Now, I request all of you, please don't mention your roll numbers. I mean, our priority should be to learn something. Please don't mention it on the Wise app either. Our family lived in the Chura Basti, 5 brothers, 1 sister, 2 chachas, and his family. So this is the description of his family. So they lived in Chura Basti. There were 5 brothers, 1 sister. There were 2 chachas, 1 tau, and his family. So you will relate to this because this is something very typical of India. Chachas and tau lived separately. Everyone in the family did some or the other work. Even then, we didn't manage to get 2 decent meals a day. We did all sorts of work for the Tagas, including cleaning. So they would do work for the upper caste Hindus. Because they were churas, they indulged in this profession of sweeping. They would do this work for the upper class Hindus. We did all sorts of work for the Tagas, including cleaning, agricultural work, and general labor. We would often have to work without pay. Nobody dared to refuse this unpaid work for which we got neither money nor grain, and most often they would not get paid for their work. Instead, we got sworn in at and abused, and they were abused every time. They did not call us by our names, even, their identity. They would not accept their identity. They were not called by their names. That was the condition they lived in. If a person were older, then he would be called Oi Chude. If a person was of a mature age, he would be called Oi Chude. If the person were younger or at the same age, then if this person was a younger one, he would be designated as Abe Chude. That was the condition they lived in. That was the plight they lived in. Untouchability was so rampant. We know about untouchability. And it was so rampant that while it was considered all right to touch dogs and cats, look at this. This is tragic, really tragic. It was considered all right to touch dogs and cats or cows and buffaloes if one happened to touch a chuda. If one happened to touch this person who belonged to this caste, one got contaminated or polluted. It was believed that if a higher caste Hindu touched this person, he would get contaminated, he would get polluted. The chudas were not seen as humans. They were not seen as humans. They were not treated as humans. They were simply things for use. They were objectified. They were, seen as objects. Their utility lasted until the work was done. Use them and then throw them away. They were treated just like objects. When their use was over, they were thrown away. Nobody cared about their identity. Nobody cared about their respect. They were not even called as humans, nor even designated by their own names. A Christian used to visit our neighborhood. His name was Sevak Ram Masihi. He would sit with the children of the churas around him. He used to teach them reading and writing. So this Christian in the neighborhood, he used to teach them reading and writing. The government schools did not allow these children to enroll. Look at the condition. The government schools did not allow them to enroll these low caste Hindus. My family sent only myself to Sevak Ram Masihi, and I was sent to Sevak Ram Masihi. My brothers were all working. They were not educated, they were all working. There was no question of sending our sisters to school. So there was no question at all because it was a patriarchal setup. So they would usually not send their daughters to school. I learned my alphabet in Master Sevak Ram Masihi's open air school. So he learned these alphabets in the open air school of this Christian, Sevak Ram Masihi. A school without mats or rooms. That school, it did not have mats, it did not have rooms. One day, Sevak Ram Masihi and my father had an argument. My father took me to the basic primary school. So one fine day they had an argument, this teacher and his father, and then his father took him to another school, a basic primary school. There my father begged Master Harful Singh, Masterji, I'll be forever in your debt if you teach this child of mine a letter of two. And this, the father of our author, he took him to a basic primary school and then he begged there. He begged the headmaster, whose name was Harful Singh, please give admission to my ward. Master Harful Singh asked us to come the next day, and he asked them to come the next day. My father went. He kept going for several days. Finally, one day I was admitted to the school, and he was admitted to the school. The country had become independent 8 years ago. So this is the time when country had become independent some 8 years ago. The country had become independent 8 years ago. Gandhiji's uplifting of the untouchables was resounding everywhere. Although the doors of the government schools had begun to open for the untouchables, all the leaders, they were doing their bit so that these students, these people from the lowest strata of the society would get admission in the schools, but still it was difficult for them to get admitted in the schools. The mentality of the ordinary people had not changed much. I had to sit away from the others in the class, that too on the floor. Now, he got admitted in the school, but look at the condition. He was not allowed to sit with other students, those who belonged to the upper caste, and he had to sit on the floor. The mat ran out before reaching the spot I sat on. Sometimes I would have to sit way behind everybody, right near the door. Even sometimes he had to sit near the door. That was the discrimination that would happen. And the letters on the board from there seemed faded. And such was his plight that he was not able to see what was written on the board because he was made to sit near the door. Because he was told that this is your place, this is where you belong. That was the mentality of the society. There was discrimination everywhere. The children of the Tyagis, as I said, belonged to the upper caste. They were upper caste Hindus. So their children would also learn in this school. They were enrolled in this school, and what they would do is will learn. The children of the Tyagis would tease me by calling me Chudeka. That is how they treated him, the upper caste Hindus. Sometimes they would beat me without any reason. He was beaten, he was bullied. This was an absurd, tormented life that made me introverted and irritable. And this made him introvert. This made him irritable. That was his plight. That was his condition. If I got thirsty in school, then I had to stand near the hand pump. The boys would beat me in any case. This is so tragic. If sometimes you'd feel thirsty, he was made to wait near the hand pump. And he was also beaten there. But the teachers also punished me. The teachers were also, they would believe in this discrimination. They also punished him. All sorts of stratagems, tactics were tried so that I would run away from the school and take up the kind of work for which I was born. So there was every sort of thing was done to him so that he was made to believe that this place is not for you. You should leave this school. Your place is just go with your father and go on sweeping. Okay, so that is how society treats people belonging to the lowest castes. According to these perpetrators, my attempts to get schooling were unwarranted. I was not, should not have been here. That's what they believed in. Ram Singh and Sukhan Singh were also in my class. So we have the introduction of another character, we have the introduction of Ram Singh, and we have the introduction of Sukhan Singh. They also belonged to the lowest castes. My Ram Singh was a Chamar and Sukhan Singh was a Jinwar. Ram Singh's father and mother worked as agricultural laborers. So again, they belong to the lowest strata of the society. Sukhan Singh's father was a peon in the inter college. The three of us studied together, grew up together, experienced the sweet and sour moments of the childhood together, and three of us were very good in our studies, but our lower caste background dodged us at every step. They were good at studies, all of the three. They were friends also, but because they were from this low caste Hindus, they were discriminated. So that made their life very difficult. Barla village also had some Muslim Tyagis who were called Tagas as well. So there was this caste, it was among Hindus as well as among Muslims. The behavior of these Muslim Tagas was just like that of the Hindu Tagas. So it's not that this caste system was prevalent in the Hindus only, it was prevalent within the Muslim community also. So these Tagas, they would be in Hindu community also, in Muslim community also. And both behaved the same. If we ever went out wearing neat and clean clothes, we had to hear their taunts that pierced deep inside like poisoned arrows. As if, they were not deemed fit to wear these new clothes. So they were again discriminated upon. They were abused. If we went to the school in neat and clean clothes, then our class fellows said, Abe Chudeke, he has come dressed in new clothes. They were taunted every time. Even if they would, they were thought of like, they don't deserve new clothes. And what would their fellow students say? If one went wearing old And then if one went wearing old and shabby clothes, then they said, "Abe chude ke, get away from me, you stink." So it was a double-edged sword. If they would put on new clothes, they were discriminated, they were abused, and then if they would go wearing shabby clothes, they were again abused. This was their plight. This was our no-win situation. We were humiliated whichever way we dressed. Whichever way they dressed, they were humiliated. I reached fourth class. Headmaster Bishambar Singh had been replaced by Kali Ram. Now he is in fourth class now. Some years have passed. Now Headmaster Bishambar Singh had been replaced by Kali Ram. Along with him had come another new teacher. After the arrival of these two, the three of us fell on terrible times. We would be thrashed at the slightest excuse. And with the changing of this headmaster, their plight also changed. Their plight became even worse. After the arrival of these two, the three of us fell on terrible times. We would be thrashed at the slightest excuse. Ram Singh would escape once in a while, but Sukhan Singh and I got beaten almost daily. I was very weak and skinny those days. Sukhan Singh had developed a boil on his belly, just below his ribs. There was an acne, some sort of an acne on his belly. While in class, he used to keep his shirt folded so as to keep the boil uncovered. This way, the shirt could be kept clear of the pus on the one hand, and on the other, the boil protected from the blows of the teacher. One day, while thrashing Sukhan Singh, the teacher's fist hit the boil. So, this teacher, while thrashing him, his fist hit the boil. Sukhan screamed with pain. The boil had burst. Seeing him flaying with pain, I too began to cry. While we cried, the teacher was showering abuse on us non-stop. If I repeated his abusive words here, they would smear the nobility of Hindi. I say that because many big named Hindi writers had wrinkled their noses and eyebrows when I had a character in my short story, Bel ki Khal, swear. Coincidentally, the character who swore was a Brahmin, that is, the knower of Brahma, of God. Was it possible? Would a Brahmin swear? So he was abused in such a manner, such abusive words were used which are not appropriate for the writer to mention it here. The ideal image of the teachers that I saw in my childhood has remained indelibly imprinted on my memory. That happens. You remember your teachers when you are in school. Same is the case with Omprakash Valmiki. He remembered his teachers and he doesn't remember them for good. Whenever someone starts talking about a great guru, I remember all those teachers who used to swear about mothers and sisters. They used to fondle good looking boys and invite them to their homes and sexually abuse them. So there was also this trend of sexually abusing those students who are good looking. So that is the image of the teachers that he has in his mind. It is not a very good image, it is a negative image. So I think we'll stop here. So we'll continue this tomorrow. Meanwhile, I'll try to make a link for your attendance. So I would share that in the WhatsApp classroom, and then you'll do your attendance there. But then please just don't disturb it here. Don't put your roll numbers here. Try to focus on the studies. Try to focus on the class. So let's meet tomorrow. Till then, it's goodbye from me. Thank you very much.